That good-for-nothing wife. Just ditch that woman before we get into real trouble. I overheard my husband Brad and his mother say as they thought I was asleep. Their attitudes had completely changed. They left home, but shamelessly returned, claiming they didn't want to lose their assets, and began causing chaos. When I confronted them with the reality of our situation, their true colors showed. My name is Daisy. I'm 30 years old. After dating Brad for 5 years, we got engaged and moved in with his parents. Initially, we agreed to buy our own house when we had our first child. Nearly 2 years have passed without a child, and we're still living with his parents. Living with Brad, his mother, and his younger brother, I often became a subject of concern for those around me. My parents lived far away and couldn't help, but my husband was always kind, and I had a good relationship with my mother-in-law, which made me happy. One day, I had an accident and broke a bone, ending up hospitalized and unable to move on my own. At first, my husband and mother-in-law visited me daily, showing their concern, but soon, their visits dwindled to once a week. Despite being grateful for their visits, my world shattered when I overheard their conversation after the doctor informed me I might have lasting injuries. She can't do housework or anything, but she's going to cost us more than ever. What a useless wife, Brad sneered. With her lingering issues, having kids is even more out of the question. Maybe it's a good thing we don't have kids. If she stays bedridden, I'll have to do all the housework and care for her. I didn't sign up for this, he continued. I didn't either, his mother chimed in. She was supposed to do the housework and caregiving. If she hadn't gotten into that accident, she could have continued as our maid. What a disappointment. Before this becomes too troublesome, get rid of her. I'll divorce her quickly, Brad agreed. Thinking I was asleep, they had this conversation in my hospital room. To them, I was nothing more than a maid and caregiver. Their attitudes became blatantly cold afterward. Your husband hardly comes anymore, does he? He must be searching for a new woman. Only you had a child, you might have kept him, my mother-in-law taunted. As Brad's visits became even less frequent, she seemed to take pleasure in saying nasty things. However, my brother-in-law stepped up. He did the laundry, checked if I needed anything, and was generally very helpful. He visited me nearly every day and even took me outside in my wheelchair, providing a small comfort in an otherwise painful time. When I felt suffocated by my long hospitalization, I was often exhausted from physical therapy and sometimes wanted to give up. But I think I've made it this far thanks to my brother-in-law. His presence was an immense help to me. Although I'm not getting worse and physical therapy is going well, it's still uncertain if there will be any lasting issues. When I told my husband and mother-in-law about this, they started arguing. Seriously? See, I told you we should have gotten rid of her sooner, my mother-in-law scoffed. What are you two even saying? Aren't you being too harsh on Daisy, who's been taking care of our house and our father all this time? My brother-in-law retorted. In reality, I had been caring for my father-in-law for 5 years while dating my husband. When we started dating, Brad's parents suggested, why don't you live together since you're going to get married anyway? It's a great deal. We can save money, live together, and then get married when we're settled, they added. When I hesitated, they reassured me, it's okay. We have plenty of rooms and we won't invade your privacy. Plus, you don't need to pay rent. You want to marry my son, right? How could I refuse? But in return, they had a favor to ask. Daisy, while you're working from home, can you look after our father who needs care? It's only for 4 to 5 hours during the day when I'm out for my part-time job. Brad's mother asked. We also have my brother, so the two of you can work together. My brother-in-law, who also worked from home, and I teamed up to take care of my father-in-law. My father-in-law and brother-in-law were very close. My father-in-law had a hobby of collecting furniture and even had a separate house just for it. My brother-in-law and I always enjoyed hearing about his hobby, and my father-in-law loved his caring son, Reagan. Eventually, my father-in-law's health began to decline, and after years of care, he passed away. After that, my husband proposed to me, saying, thank you for always taking care of my father. Let's continue to be together. Let's get married. Despite having worked hard on housework and caregiving, the moment I became immobile, my husband and mother-in-law's attitude changed as if I were worthless. Even I, normally composed, was infuriated. Force me, please pay what you're supposed to, I demanded. Well, I don't want any trouble, so I'll give you the house. Let's waive the division of other property, Brad conceded. I wondered if he would really give me the house, but since my father-in-law had left a substantial inheritance, it seemed plausible. The inheritance, divided among my mother-in-law, Brad, and Reagan, amounted to approximately $300,000 each, so Brad seemed to have enough assets. Reagan was tasked with handling all the paperwork with the executor, requiring several trips to the court, which was quite a hassle. No way, we can't give away the house. If we divide the property, I'll lose half my savings, Brad protested. It's just a wastefully large house in the countryside. Even if we give it away, it's not an issue. At the highest estimate, it's only worth about $100,000, and various fees will be deducted when we sell it. It's cheaper than losing half my savings, Reagan reasoned. Well, if you say so, Brad, but what if she demands more later? What if rumors spread in the neighborhood because we abandoned her? My mother-in-law worried. As they debated what to do with me, Reagan interrupted, then I'll take her in. Why would you go out of your way to do that? Brad asked suspiciously. Ah, you've been interested in Daisy, haven't you? That's why you're so willing. You can have her if you want, but she's no longer of any use to us. Don't ask to take Daisy and the house back later, okay? My mother-in-law sneered. Why would I? I just hope you won't come asking for money later. And remember, you can't return damaged goods, Reagan replied sharply. Brad and Reagan signed the papers and arranged to formally change the property title through a lawyer. I'll take out some money from my savings, so why don't you find a younger, healthier, and prettier woman to marry and build a better house, Reagan suggested. Sounds good, Brad agreed. Then he turned to me. Hey Daisy, get a lawyer to file for our divorce quickly. They said they'd stay in a hotel for a while and left the room. Reagan and I silently saw them off. I had to find a lawyer to file for our divorce first. With Reagan's help, I filed for the divorce, and in a few days Brad and I became complete strangers. A week later, Brad and my mother-in-law packed their belongings and left the house. It was strange that Reagan, Brad's brother, continued to visit me. Now that I've divorced your brother, there's no need for you to worry about your former sister-in-law, I told him. He responded, I'm doing this because I wanted to let you know that I didn't get along with you just because you were my brother's wife. We both provided care and did housework together. We've talked a lot more in these 7 years than you ever did with my brother. We're friends, aren't we? Reagan said with a gentle smile. All I could do was express my thanks and gratitude. A month later, I was discharged from the hospital. Although I had to visit for physical therapy, I felt relieved to be home after such a long time. Do you think those two will ever come back? I'm worried they might return and make me work again, I confided. If they come back, I'll drive them away. I can't forgive them for treating you so horribly. Plus, they have no right to return to this house, Reagan reassured me. I was still unable to move as before, so Reagan took care of most of the household chores. Fortunately, as I had been working from home as a freelancer, I was able to return to work and contribute financially. Thanks to the bi-weekly physical therapy, I recovered smoothly without any complications. A year later, I was able to live as before, and Reagan and I collaborated on the housework. We spent more time together, syncing our days off to go on trips. Just when I thought our peaceful days would continue, a storm suddenly came. One night, while Reagan and I were eating dinner, there was a knock on the door and the intercom rang repeatedly. Nervously, I answered, and the person on the monitor was Brad. Hey, open up, he demanded, thinking this noise might disturb the neighbors. I opened the front door, and Brad entered the house without hesitation. What do you want? I asked, irritated by his sudden appearance. Why do I have to put up with such an attitude just for coming home? This isn't your home anymore. State your business and leave quickly, I demanded. What are you talking about? I'll be living here again from today. Oh, I'm hungry. Hey Daisy, give me some food, Brad demanded, expecting me to serve him. Hey, cut it out. Why are you here? I asked, growing increasingly frustrated. Well, I've spent almost all my money, and my mom will be here soon too, so leave the door unlocked, he said casually. As I remained silent, he remarked, Oh, you're all healed up, huh? That's great. Let's get back together. You must have had a hard time without me. His audacity made me feel sick. Stop it. I divorced you. I don't care about you anymore, I snapped. Don't get cocky. You've been living on my money all this time, and you can't do anything but housework. Just shut up and do as I say, Brad shouted, his voice dripping with entitlement. Just then, the door opened, and his mother arrived. You left the door unlocked. That's careless. Oh, what's going on? She asked, noticing the tension. She's been getting cheeky, so I was giving her a bit of education. She's grown thick-skinned in the year we've been away, Brad explained casually, as if it were a normal occurrence. Once again, Brad and his mother began to make themselves at home as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Enough is enough. This isn't your home. I'm calling the police, I declared, fed up with their intrusion. Oh yeah, about that. This house was originally in your father's name, right? So that means that the heir, including my mother, makes our agreement null and void, doesn't it? Brad shouted, making an unreasonable claim. You promised to give me the house. If you're nullifying that, then everything about the division of property should be nullified as well. Give me half the savings, he demanded. Sure, but I don't have it anymore. Didn't I tell you earlier? I've squandered it all. I quit my job, spent it all on booze, fun, investments, you name it. I also have some debts with consumer finance, about $20,000, Brad confessed, shocking me with his recklessness. I guess, can you pay for me? Brad asked, catching me off guard. Initially, I thought he was lying, but his mother confirmed it. I can't lend you that much money, I replied, taken aback. I'm not asking you to lend it. I'm telling you to pay it, Brad demanded. I'm not giving you any money. I'm calling the police, I declared, feeling the surge of anger. As Reagan dialed the police to report the situation, Brad's demeanor shifted. You've become quite daring in the past year. You're just showing off because Daisy's here, he sneered. Brad began to wreak havoc in the house, breaking precious furniture that had been my father-in-law's keepsake. His mother joined in, destroying furniture and laughing as she did so. It's my father's and aunt's, I pleaded, horrified by their rampage. About 10 minutes later, when the police arrived, I explained the situation to them. This is quite a mess. Let's hear your side of the story, the officer said. What's wrong with me breaking things in my own house? Brad retorted. That's right, we're just crushing things we don't need. What's the problem? His mother added. When the police seemed unsure how to respond, Reagan stepped in. This house has never belonged to these two. It's under Daisy's name. Huh? What kind of nonsense are you talking about? Brad exclaimed. Actually, before he passed away, our father-in-law left a will through a lawyer. Of course, you wouldn't know. You handed over what you were told and left the rest to Reagan. So this house was yours from the beginning, Reagan explained. As the truth sunk in, Brad and his mother stood dumbfounded. So, this isn't your property, then, the officer clarified. Oh, hold on, but I'm her ex-husband. We're like family, so she'll forgive me, right? Brad attempted to reason. Don't make me laugh. You're a stranger once you're an ex. I don't even know that you were in contact with another woman before our divorce was finalized and who treated me like a maid if not you, I countered firmly. No, that's not what happened. I was just going along with what my mom said. She ordered me to do all this, Brad. What are you saying? Your failed business, your failed relationships with young girls, your gambling debts, aren't these all you're doing? His mother confessed, exposing his deceit. According to his mother, Brad had been trying to marry a young woman after our divorce, a revelation that left me stunned. He also quit his job to start his own business, but it failed in just a month. Even with money, Brad was rejected by the unemployed man and became reckless, going around playing and gambling, saying that he had money and could afford it. He had said that he had almost no money left, and it seemed that it was indeed nearly zero. You brought this upon yourself. All this is Brad's fault, so at least forgive me. They both desperately pleaded, trying to shift the blame and groveling. This was truly ridiculous. No, I won't forgive either of you. And this isn't something from the past, is it? You were treating me like a servant until a moment ago, right? I retorted firmly. Not leaving when I asked you to leave is illegal. And since the furniture collected by my late father-in-law is now mine, you'll need to compensate me for that, I demanded. But all right, we will compensate you. Just please don't get the police involved. You wouldn't want me to go to jail, would you? Brad pleaded desperately. I actually don't care at all. By the way, we're married, I revealed, shocking them both. It turned out I was married to my former brother-in-law, Reagan. He was now my husband. It hasn't even been a year, and you've moved on to another man, my own brother at that. Brad exclaimed in disbelief. What are you talking about? You moved on before you were even divorced, didn't you? You wouldn't return Daisy to me, no matter how many times I asked. Stop clinging to the past already, Reagan countered, leaving Brad speechless. I don't care anymore. I'll pay for whatever damages there are. How much for my idiot husband's junk? Reagan asked, taking charge of the situation. Well, if we calculate roughly about $100,000, I replied. Ha! What? Brad and his mother were shocked. The furniture that my father-in-law had collected was all high-end pieces made by famous designers. Brad and his mother, who had no interest in these items, seemed to have believed they were just junk, I explained. You're going to compensate for what you've broken, right? We're not sure if we can get the same items, but make sure to pay properly, Reagan asserted. Unable to afford such compensation, Brad and his mother were distraught. For the time being, the police took them away for trespassing and vandalism. Of course, I didn't forgive them and went ahead with the lawsuit. Afterwards, Brad and his mother, who were desperately seeking help from Reagan, were bluntly rejected, with him saying, I'm ashamed to even be related by blood. Brad and his mother were likely receiving their just desserts together. And there's one more thing I kept secret. My father-in-law told me to sell the house and use the money as I wish. Reagan had told me that the price of the house was $100,000, but in reality, the document stated the value of the house around $500,000. It's a good location, so it might sell for a bit more. But for now, Reagan and I decided to take it easy in the house. My father-in-law left us with no plans to sell it. Eventually, we plan to sell the land and build a new house. I had some worries about having children, so after getting married to Reagan, I went to the gynecologist for a checkup. But there were no issues with either Reagan or me. Now, with the troublemakers gone, Reagan and